Both black and white supremacists use data on brain size and weight to support their conclusion that their race is superior. The white supremacists say because white people have a larger brain and it weighs more, that explains the reason for the lower IQ level among blacks, so therefore they infer that blacks are genetically inferior. The black supremacists take the information, the data that refutes this claim, and cast a lot of doubt on it to claim, coupled along with information about Neanderthal and how all races besides Africans have Neanderthal DNA, to try to prove that blacks are genetically superior. The clip you're about to see is from a guy named Black Lightning. He has mastered this topic. I suggest that you subscribe to his channel and see his videos on race and intelligence and refuting race realism. I'll put those links in the box. Enjoy this video clip.
The next argument is the Neanderthal genes. This argument is so absurd because I doubt these people even know what these genes are and what they are responsible for. They say Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA is found in Eurasians and not in people with African descent, so therefore, these are the genes that set us apart. These are the genes that make Eurasians superior to Africans. Humans interbred with Neanderthals and Denisovans, and their offspring were fertile, which means they weren't too different from us. Here's what we know about the genes from Neanderthals. It seems that a lot of the traits we humans inherited from them increased health risks in certain human populations. Not something you would want to brag about. Don't worry, I won't use this information to say Eurasians are inferior in some way, because I'm not a racist. Of course, the genes also influenced skin and hair characteristics. Neanderthal DNA in humans is really low anyways. I believe these people bring up Neanderthals because they had a bigger brain than us. A bigger brain doesn't necessarily mean you'll be smarter. From this study, the reason why Neanderthals had a bigger brain was because they dedicated far more of their brains to controlling their bodies than we do. They were stockier and stronger than us, despite them being shorter. When we branched off from our common ancestor, Homo heidelbergensis, we evolved differently. Different parts of our brains developed. Neanderthals had enlarged visual and somatic regions, and our brains increased in other areas. Neanderthals didn't develop the same way we did socially. They never invented a written language, developed agriculture, or progressed past the Stone Age. You're hurting yourself when you think you inherited their intelligence. Don't get me wrong, Neanderthals were intelligent, but Homo sapiens sapiens are more intelligent than Neanderthals. We have evidence to suggest this. This is nothing like saying certain races are intelligent because of their genes. That has inconclusive evidence. You can find scientific sources on Neanderthals, but anything on human populations in regards to intelligence are people making extreme conclusions. A bigger brain doesn't necessarily mean you're intelligent. The Neanderthal's brain was bigger than ours, but it was because it was used to regulate bodily functions. It had little to do with a gap in intelligence. So what about human races? There is an average brain size and head circumference that each race have. East Asians are at the top, Europeans next, then Africans. Like I've said in the previous video, the lines drawn between the races are not clearly defined. Most anthropologists don't use such a concept. In studies, when controlled for socio-economical differences, the racial differences in birth weight, brain volume, and IQ disappeared. Since many black people on average aren't wealthy, it makes sense that they will have lower IQ on average. Saying it's because of their genes is not well supported. Also, nutrition plays a big role in brain development, and a lack of nutrition can have some serious implications on brain development. Those who are wealthy have a greater opportunity to be healthy. That is why the brains of Homo erectus, Homo ergaster, and Homo habilis have gotten bigger because of the introduction of protein and certain fats in their diets. Our brains require nutrition such as protein, certain fats, iron, zinc, copper, iodine, and more to develop properly. Do you think a starving African has access to all of that? I'm sure that if the Africans receive proper nutrition, the brain size in the next generation of Africans will increase. Think of it as hidden potential. They have the genes to grow a bigger brain size, but without the proper nutrition, it won't reach its highest potential. There has been significant gene flow between these races, so it's definitely not representative of everyone. Gene flow is the transfer of alleles or genes from one population to another. Since human populations are too similar for the differences to be of taxonomic significance, it's not even wise using brain size as an explanation for the IQ differences. J. Philip Rushton tried doing that, and that is why his research was flawed. You can read what Lieberman had to say about Rushton's study on brain size in the description box. The problem here is that people use brain size as an indicator of intelligence. As I just pointed out, that's not necessarily the case. The Neanderthals' bigger brain didn't make them smarter than us. Their bigger brain was used for regulating bodily functions, not intelligence. Saying the different brain size has something to do with intelligence is you distorting facts to support your extreme conclusions. Yes, brain volume and intelligence are positively correlated, but experts in these fields caution people from making oversimplified conclusions based on that alone. A species might have a bigger brain, but it seems that certain structures within their brain will contribute to intelligence. Neanderthals had a bigger brain than us, but certain cerebral structures in our brains made us more intelligent than them. Same with elephants. They have a bigger brain than ours, but intelligence has more to do with certain cerebral structures than overall brain size. Many studies relating measures of brain weight, head circumference, CT or MRI brain volume to different intelligence test measures with variously defined samples of subjects have yielded inconsistent findings. Most correlations ranged between 0.3 to 0.4. Once again, the relationship between brain structure and their functions is much more efficient in figuring out how the brain contributes to intelligence than saying brain size determines intelligence. A bigger brain size doesn't necessarily mean you're more intelligent. If that's the case, whales and dolphins should be smarter than us humans because their brains are bigger than ours. I'll leave my sources in the description box. Referring to Neanderthal and Denisovan genes as the genes that make certain human populations better than others is ridiculous.